Hey everyone, so Maleficent, Mistress of Evil is the sequel to the 2014 film Maleficent. This sequel follows Maleficent and her goddaughter Aurora as they begin to question the complex family ties that they have as they are pulled in different directions. This being a sequel to 2014's Maleficent, a lot of people were very excited for this movie. I personally, I'll be honest, right off the bat, I'll just say this. The first Maleficent I thought was okay. I thought it was handled together by a great performance by Angelina Jolie, but the film itself was meh. The trailers for the sequel I've honestly only seen probably once or twice, and I was kind of left like, I don't know how this is going to be, especially given Disney's track record with sequels. It usually isn't that good. Right off the bat, though, I will say this: Angelina Jolie, she is tailor made for this role, much in the same way as the first film. She does such a great job with the material that she's given. I also really liked Ella Fanning. She's always a charm to watch in the film. Michelle Pfeiffer's in this as well. There's a pretty big cast in this movie, and for the most part, they're all done really well, especially with what they're given. I will say this: there is one actress that I was like, I'll get into that in the negatives, but I also liked that how this film was really competent in terms of costume and production design. Like the costume design, especially. I mean, Disney. This is something I shouldn't really be given a positive, considering this to be expected pretty much in Disney films nowadays. But I mean, like Disney puts their entire budget into the costume design, and it's so meticulous and so luscious and beautiful to look at that you just can't help but appreciate it, even if again it's kind of to be expected with their films. With those positives out of the way, though, everything else about this movie is terrible. Where do I begin? Well, here's where I'll begin, and this is something that if I were, doing a review that would essentially be put on the back of a Blu-ray. This is essentially the PG version of Game of Thrones episode The Bells. Now, hold the phone. I know what some of you might be thinking if you haven't seen my channel. I actually liked Game of Thrones Season 8. I didn't love it. I know, don't turn off the review just yet. I didn't love it, but there were some episodes I actually genuinely loved, specifically The Bells. Everything that worked in that episode of Game of Thrones was because of the characters, the intensity, the ferocity, the unpredictability of what was going to happen, the score, the cinematography, the ferocity of the directing. All of which in this film, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, in that final act, when they are trying to do all that Game of Thrones, in my opinion, succeed with, everything falls apart because you don't care about the characters with what they're going through because everything is cookie cutter and tailor made for essentially the plot. The plot isn't organic in its fashion. It is essentially we as viewers know what's going on whilst the characters are figuring things out as they're going on, and we're just kind of left bored by everything because I'm not going to lie, with the villain, if you don't know who it is, I'm not going to spoil who it is, but the villain, you know that they're the villain as soon as you see them. And by that, it's kind of like hard to then watch all these events, especially when that individual does something despicable in front of everyone. And you can see it. Like, you can literally see that that individual did this act, and it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, you guys don't see that? On top of that, again, I'm being very vague with their gender, but that individual also says something out loud that everyone can hear. Like, it's not like that individual mumbled it. You can actually hear what that person's saying, and it's something that other people, if they heard, which it was very audible, like everyone could hear it, they would be like, wait a minute, why are we following this person? And it was very frustrating, I'm not going to lie. And that's just it. This movie is very frustrating because it easily could have been good. If you're taking from Game of Thrones, one of the best TV shows in the world, you would hope that they would be doing a good job with it, but they're not. Because again, it comes down to the characters and the writing. You have these characters that are getting torn all over. I understand about having a lot going on at once, but like when you have it where everything that's going on, how there's like 5 different plot threads going on, and none of them are really getting fleshed out, and you don't even care about the characters to begin with because of that, you're kind of left in the dark, in my opinion. And then you also have characters doing things, and this is my biggest pet peeve probably in movies, you have characters doing things not for the sake of they themselves as characters, but to get the plot moving, to get the plot from point A to B to C. And I don't like that personally. That's just not how I roll in terms of filmmaking. I personally think it's lazy, and this is a film that is very lazy, unfortunately. It's also very disjointed. I think that there are some scenes where it's trying to be very 2019 with its approach, which I'm fine with. But then there are other scenes where it's trying to be very like old-fashioned, and I'm kind of like, This isn't gelling well. And this has been a problem lately with Disney movies. They're stuck in the 50s and then they're trying to also be 2019. And I think it's not gelling well. It really isn't. And this is a prime example of that. Also, the visual effects are very spotty. There are some sequences where they're really well done. And there are other sequences that are really not well done. I also think that pacing is an issue. I mean, I mentioned disjointed, but like it's a really big problem, especially that middle half. It's very flabby. And there are also just sequences where I think could have been a little bit risky. Like I know some people are going to say, oh, well, it's a kid's movie, so it doesn't really have to be risky. But there are sequences that also, again, take from Game of Thrones that could have pushed the envelope a little bit more. Or if they hadn't revealed who the villain was so early and had revealed the villain towards the very end, it would have been like a holy cow type moment, and you would have found that certain situations were very even more unpredictable. And you know what? I'm going to get into that into the spoilers at the very end because there are certain scenes that I have to talk about. I really do. But for now, I'm just going to say this. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, I think it is a total mess. It doesn't work in terms of characters. You really don't care about them. It doesn't work in terms of story. It's very flat, uninteresting, and suffice to say, sleep-inducing. It's the cure to insomnia. I think in terms of filmmaking, it really doesn't work besides costume design and production design. Very lazy score. Directing is terrible. Makes sense because it's the same director who did Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which I also absolutely hate. All this said aside, there is, again, one performance that I'll mention in the spoilers that I also really didn't like. And Angelina Jolie, even with her great charisma, couldn't save this movie. And unfortunately, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, I'm going to be giving a 1 out of 5 star rating. That's right, guys. I hated this movie. I think it is easily one of the worst movies I've seen this year. Terrible, terrible. Now, if you've seen the movie, I'm going to now talk about spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't care, you can continue watching. But for now, don't forget the subscription notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later. But let's get into spoilers. So the big elephant in the room is Michelle Pfeiffer. She is the person that I think did a really terrible job. I think that she easily could be seen as someone that was enjoying chewing up the scenery, but her character in itself is like a dumbed down version of Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. I think that's what really, really got me annoyed, because in Game of Thrones, Cersei Lannister is one of my favorite characters. Goes without saying. I absolutely love her character. So to see someone try to riff on that character and fail so badly, it just didn't work for me. And there are scenes where she is so evil, and we as viewers see it, and it's like, why aren't these characters seeing it? Like, the character literally kisses her husband, who, by the way, is like on his deathbed, essentially, and she says something along the lines of, you wanted peace, and, here's your peace. Like, and it's kind of like, wait a minute, if she's saying this out loud and people can hear this, like, they're probably going to want to question this. Oh, no, they're not going to question. Okay, whatever. And then also just her entire plan is just so one-dimensional. I mean, this film is trying to tackle themes, in my opinion, of like race, and it does so in such a clumsy way that I feel like this is kind of geared towards like just older people, where it's kind of like, yeah, this is how it is. It's very black and white. It's like, no, the real world, racism is very gray, where there are people that, yes, they do hate people just because of the color of the skin, but they also have other motives. And I kind of wish that this film focused on other motives as well, instead of just kind of like blindness. And I get it that some people are like that, but in terms of filmmaking, sometimes it is important to show the bigger picture, to show that characters are more than just being one-dimensional and are fully fleshed out, even if you don't like them. And that's fine. You're not supposed to like this person. She's a villain. But at the same time, the best villains also do have some dimension to them. And I feel like this is the character that really kind of messed things up for me. The church scene I also wanted to give a shout out to, I think was terrible. I think that easily could have been the red wedding of essentially Maleficent 2. But instead it's not, because, and this is the reason why I mentioned earlier, it comes down to Michelle Pfeiffer's character. If we didn't know literally as soon as we saw her that she was the villain, if it was revealed later on, like maybe it would cross-cut edit to like, as we're finally figuring out that she's the bad guy to the church, it's kind of like, holy cow, she's the villain, and she's setting up a trap for all these fairies, and she's gonna kill them because of her blind racism. It would have been like a holy cow moment. But instead, we know everything, and because of that, that scene isn't stressful, because we know they're gonna make it out alive, because we have all of that knowledge already in front of us. So we can already see from point A, B, C, and how it's gonna all work out. And that's where this film is problematic, I think. It comes down to all the things I mentioned in the spoiler-free section, but this is just an elaborate expression of my thoughts freely as to why I really didn't like this. And again, it's not even those aspects. I mentioned earlier, as well as how the filmmaking I thought wasn't good as well. And just also, this is a film that's kind of stuck in 1950 and not 19, it's 1950s and 2019 is when it's stuck between. And I think it really does show, unfortunately, with this film. Again, this film could have been so much more than it was. And unfortunately, it's a terrible movie. I personally really didn't like it. It is a failure at trying to riff on Game of Thrones, and it doesn't even work on a standalone movie. Guys, that's my thoughts. Spoilers, again, unfiltered, but figured you guys would want to hear them. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What did you think of this movie? Again, I figured I could talk about this movie half hour, but instead we'll stick with 10, 15 minutes. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below if you have any further questions down below. And as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and catch you guys later.